This is a video about arm compartments. We'll describe the muscle contents of the anterior and posterior compartments of the arm. We'll describe the attachments of individual skeletal muscles and therefore work out the actions of those skeletal muscles, and we'll use relevant principles to help complete some set activities. So this is a diagram taken from the Moore textbook, and it shows the contents of the anterior compartment arm muscles. As we go through, it's important to not only learn the contents of the compartments but also to consider the relationships of those muscles to other muscles and other important structures, and to locate them on a surface anatomy model, whether that's your own arm or a willing volunteer's arm. So the contents of the anterior compartment include the biceps brachii, and you can see quite clearly the two heads of biceps, and it's a superficially located muscle. If we remove the biceps and look more deeply, we can identify the coracobrachialis here, and more inferiorly the brachialis muscle. Again, brachialis is deep to biceps brachii. We can see it on the superficial image, just located partly shown here. Another requirement of the objectives is to learn the attachments of the muscles of the arm compartments. There's a couple of different methods I can recommend for that. If you like to learn visually, Moore's and most other textbooks will show you some images of attachments of particular muscles. So you can identify red and blue markings to indicate skeletal muscle attachments. If you like to learn from tables of muscle attachments, they will be provided for you somewhere nearby this image in the same textbook. So considering the brachialis muscle shown here, we can identify its attachments, including the proximal attachment, including the distal 1/2 of the anterior surface of the humerus, and distal attachments including the coronoid process and ulnar tuberosity. So you could find that out visually looking at the image or consulting the muscle table in the textbook, whichever you prefer to work from. Some principles that will help you with completing the functions of skeletal muscles in the compartments, shown in smaller font, are principles M4 and M5, and these should be revision for you at this point. They're principles about the naming of skeletal muscles and the fact that they attach to two or more different structures in order to produce movement. Important principles for this presentation: M6, a muscle must cross a joint in order to act at that joint, and M7, the position of a muscle relative to a joint will determine the plane and direction of the movement it can produce at the joint. So using this principle, it is enough to know the attachment and location of a skeletal muscle, and from knowing that, you will be able to determine what action it produces at a particular joint. So let's go through an example together. This is a table that you will need to complete as you work through the content, and we've listed for you the anterior compartment muscles, so the biceps brachii, brachialis and the coracobrachialis. We've asked you to name the joint and state the position of the muscle relative to the joint, and therefore work out the action of the muscle. So I've given you an example for brachialis. This muscle crosses the elbow joint. It's located anterior to the elbow joint. Therefore, it will produce an anteriorly directed movement, and we term that flexion. So either pause the video now or at the end of the presentation, come back and you will need to fill in for biceps brachii and coracobrachialis the name of the joint crossed, position, and therefore the action of the muscles. Moving on to the posterior compartment muscles, we have a similar image, again taken from Moore's. We can see the posterior compartment muscles shown in full and also the bony attachments. So let's go through them one by one. The most prominent muscle in the posterior compartment is the triceps brachii. It's named for the 3 attachments or 3 heads that it possesses. So looking at the first head, the long head attaches up on the scapula, and this is it here. It's been cut away to partly removed to show the medial head, more deeply located. And then moving across, we can see the lateral head of the triceps, so the 3 components of the one skeletal muscle. Moving more inferiorly, and in a much smaller scale, we can identify the anconeus, which is also defined as one of the contents of the posterior muscle compartment. So similar activity as for the anterior compartment to list the contents, triceps brachii and anconeus, state the joints that both muscles are crossing, position relative to the joint, and therefore work out the action of the muscle. So the activity that I want you to work on is to complete the muscle tables for both the anterior and posterior compartments and state the actions as you're filling in the blanks. Identify the muscles on yourself as you work or on a willing surface anatomy model, and complete any muscle attachments or labelling diagrams that you have in your subject manual or pre-prac activities. Check your answers on the relevant forum, and as always, post any questions on the relevant forum.